Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the A segment of episode 21 of Codename Kids Next Door, Operation The-SHOGUN. We begin this segment with a Kids Next Door 2x4 technology pod landing on a Keep Off the Grass sign. Number 4 emerges from the pod, and he runs towards a line of people, and then he starts to run through the line of people to the front, and he justifies it to everyone in line by saying that it's a Kids Next Door emergency. Eventually, number 4 arrives at the front of the line where number 2 is waiting, and number 4 apologizes to number 2 for taking a while to arrive. Number 2, however, responds that he gave someone else number 4's place in line, saying that there are plenty of people that are excited about the all-cheese restaurant's grand opening. Number 4 is angered by this, and he's preparing to head to the back of the line, but then he notices that number 2 is breaking out into laughter, and number 2 admits that he never would truly let someone else take number 4's place in line. Number 4 playfully threatens number 2 for pulling another one of his jokes just now, and while number 4 is continuing to give this playful threat, one of the staff members of the all-cheese restaurant slightly opens the door to take a look at the line of people outside, and the staff member of the restaurant is notably very nervous when he sees that the line of people outside is a very long line. But then the people in line notice the door being slightly opened, and they think that this is a sign that the grand opening has officially begun, and so they all start to head inside of the all-cheese restaurant, which makes the staff member of the restaurant even more nervous. Number 2 and number 4 take a moment to enjoy the sight of the interior of the all-cheese restaurant, and then they're trying to figure out where they're going to sit exactly. Number 4 is about to point out a table to sit at, but number 2 quickly decides on a different table. Number 4 is a little frustrated by this, but he goes along to sit at the table that number 2 has chosen. So number 2 and number 4 sit at a table, and number 4 admits that he's a little suspicious when he sees some adults nearby, but number 2 is confident that everyone present within the restaurant all share the same desire of just trying out the cuisine of the all-cheese restaurant. Soon enough, one of the restaurant's staff owners one of the staff members of the all-cheese restaurant greets number 2 and number 4. He introduces himself as Jacques, and he says that he'll be their waiter for this particular meal. Jacques is about to make a suggestion to number 2 and number 4, but number 4 quickly answers that he would like to try some cheese fries. Jacques nervously questions if number 4 wants cheese in the fries, and number 4's response is along the lines of, "Yeah, it's an all-cheese restaurant." But Jacques apologizes, saying that they're out of cheese fries. So number 4 decides to order some mozzarella sticks, and Jacques nervously questions number 4 if he would like mozzarella in the sticks, and number 4 gives a response that's similar to the one he gave regarding the cheese fries. Jacques apologizes once again, saying that they're out of mozzarella sticks. So he's a little frustrated now, number 4 is, and he requests that number 2 orders something instead. And so number 2 orders cheesecake, and Jacques nervously questions if number 2 would like cheese in the cake. This causes number 4 to fully lose his patience, and he questions Jacques about how can an all-cheese restaurant be out of cheese-related cuisine? Jacques apologizes and explains that the staff members of the all-cheese restaurant were forced to give up their cheese as tribute to the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N, who recently arrived. Number 4 has never heard of the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N before, so he's a little confused and trying to wrap his head around this T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N. Number 2, however, doesn't seem to be too worried. He says that they'll just order some regular hamburgers and they can add their own cheese to the hamburgers. But Jacques is nervously trying to warn Number 2 not to put any cheese out in the open, but it's too late. Number 2 pulls out some cheese that he brought with him for the event, and this causes Cheese Ninja to storm the all-cheese restaurant. Jacques yells for everyone to make a run for it, so we see several people, restaurant staff members and customers alike, trying to make a run for it when the Cheese Ninja arrive. And the Cheese Ninja managed to take the cheese that Number 2 had with him, and Number 2 tries to calm the Cheese Ninja down by saying that they just want to eat some cheese. But this does not calm the Cheese Ninja down. Oh no, it actually angers the Cheese Ninja significantly, and they capture Number 2 and Number 4. Next up, we see that there's a fortress that's built on a cliffside near the suburbs, and within this fortress, we see the Cheese Ninja have presented Number 2 and Number 4 before the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N in his throne room. The Cheese Ninja also explain how Number 2 and Number 4 were planning to eat some cheese, and they present the cheese that Number 2 had to the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N. The T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N is enraged at the thought of anyone eating cheese. He even goes as far and describes cheese as, in his words, more valuable than gold. The T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N also goes on a rant about how whoever controls the cheese controls the world, and he reveals his name to be Roquefort, and he starts to list off various cheese-related monikers or titles for himself. Number 2 and Number 4 are more amused by the monikers than anything else, which angers Roquefort, who demands that Number 2 and Number 4 be sent to the cheese mines, and the Cheese Ninja oblige in sending Number 2 and Number 4 to the cheese mines. So we see the central chamber of the cheese mines. There's a pillar in the middle of this chamber, and we see that Number 2 and Number 4 are not the only prisoners within the cheese mines. There are several other civilians, kids and adults alike, maybe a few teens even, and the Cheese Ninja are forcing the prisoners to all grate the cheese that's on the walls of the cheese mines. When they think that they have an opening, Number 2 and Number 4 try to escape from the cheese mines. Unfortunately for them, however, one of the Cheese Ninja catches them, and more Cheese Ninja appear to try and prevent their escape. But Number 2 and Number 4 are able to find a minecart, and they proceed to go into the minecart and ride through the cheese mines in order to try and escape from the Cheese Ninja. During the minecart chase, there comes a point where they reach a fork in the road, or a fork in the tracks, if you will, and Number 2 and Number 4 disagree over which direction to go. Number 2 wants to go left, Number 4 wants to go right, and Number 2 ends up taking the minecart left. This brings the minecart back to the central chamber of the cheese mines, but the minecart ends up hitting the central pillar, which actually proves to be a very helpful distraction, because the pillar, when the pillar goes down, the cheese mines are starting to collapse, and this distracts the cheese ninja. And number 2 and number 4 are able to gather all of the prisoners and escape from the cheese mines. So they're all able to go to one of the exits of the cheese mines, which takes them back into the hallways of the fortress. So with the cheese mines destroyed, there are two potential pathways. There's two potential pathways that the prisoners can take within the hallway that they're now in. Number 2 wants to go one direction, but number 4 says that this time he insists on them going the way he's choosing. And number 4 tells the prisoners that if they want to find the exit, they'll follow him. So number 4 and most of the other prisoners, number 2 being the only one who doesn't do this, go the way that number 4 wants to go. And when they leave, though, number 2 wonders to himself out loud about why number 4 thought that number 2, was trying to find the exit. And we soon see that, yes, number 2's intentions were to find Roquefort's throne room, and he does eventually find Roquefort's throne room. And when he enters the throne room, he sees Roquefort looking out the window, and he sees that the cheese mines, or the mountain that the cheese mines are within, have been destroyed. The mountains now look like a cheese volcano, you could say. And number 2 makes it clear that he wants the cheese that Roquefort has taken. But Roquefort decides that he would rather eat the cheese than let number 2 eat the cheese. And he comments on how delicious the cheese is. In anger, number 2 rips his shirt off and he declares a battle against Roquefort. And Roquefort is willing to oblige with this battle. So number 2 and Roquefort jump towards each other, and they're preparing their fight. Meanwhile, number 4 and the prisoners have found the exit, and they're cheering that they have found the exit. Number 4 is bragging to himself about how number 2 probably ended up in the throne room of the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N. But then realization hits number 4, and he goes back into the fortress to find and help his friend out. Eventually, number 4 finds the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N. throne room, and he's preparing to help number 2 out, but then he notices that Roquefort has actually been defeated. Roquefort is on the ground, and he's not completely unconscious. He's getting close to being unconscious, though, but he still has some consciousness left. And number 4 also notices that number 2 is now wearing the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N. helmet. Number 2 also goes on a rant about how he will rebuild the cheese mines and he will become the new T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N., making sure that no one will eat the cheese that he intends to eat for himself. Number 4 becomes rather nervous, and he tries to persuade number 2 against this apparent turn to darkness, trying to say he doesn't want to fight his friend. Number 2, though, says he will declare an attack against number 4, but then suddenly he just starts to break out into laughter, and number 4 sees that this was just another joke that number 2 was trying to pull. Roquefort actually chuckles a little, admitting that number 2's joke was actually rather convincing, but number 4 ends up knocking Roquefort unconscious in response to this. So number 2 and number 4 they've now exited the fortress, and they're walking back to the suburbs. And number 4 questions number 2 about how he defeated Roquefort. Number 2 is giving a rather elaborate explanation, but number 4 actually pieces together that Roquefort actually hit his head on the ceiling when he jumped up. And number 2 admits, yes, that is what happened. So the segment ends with number 2 describing to number 4 how the fight would have gone if Roquefort didn't hit his head on the ceiling. So this segment is a buddy entry, Tom Warburton described this segment as a buddy episode on one of his blog posts, but given how this channel defines segment and episode, we probably would call this particular entry a buddy segment. But there are going to be several other buddy entries in the future regarding this series. Yes, this particular buddy entry was between number 2 and number 4, and this isn't the last time that number 2 and number 4 have a buddy entry. That's to say, an entry where number 2 and number 4 are not only the spotlight characters for the entry, but there will also be other buddy entries where number 2 and number 4 are the only Sector V operatives that will appear within an entry. So this is the first one, but it won't be the last one. There will be some other buddy entries with number 2 and number 4. And previous entries in the series have shown the dynamic between number 2 and number 4 as friends, showing us that yes, they're teammates, but they also get along very well as friends when they're not on duty as Kids Next Door operatives. And this segment also continues that, because we see number 2 and number 4 were just planning to head to the All Cheese restaurant's grand opening, but it ended up leading into a mission because of the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N's arrival. And yes, the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N and the Cheese Ninja they're one of the few examples within the series that could be considered outside context problems. Now, as that title would suggest, an outside context problem would involve a character, characters, or a problem of some kind that doesn't fit the usual mold of the series. And in the case of Roquefort and his Cheese Ninja, he doesn't follow the usual trend of members of the series Rogues Gallery. Roquefort is not about adult tyranny like most of the adversaries in the series. He's more motivated just with collecting cheese, because for some reason he believes that whoever controls all the cheese of the world will control the world itself. And as we saw with the All Cheese restaurant staff members having to give up their cheese in tribute, and as we saw with the prisoners in the cheese mines, Roquefort does not single out kids in particular. He doesn't single out the Kids Next Door specifically, and he doesn't even single out kids as an age group. Roquefort pretty much will oppose anyone, kid, teen, or adult, as long as they stand in his way of collecting cheese. So, the T.H.E.S.H.O.G.U.N and the Cheese Ninja definitely stand out compared to most adversaries in the series, because, they don't fit the usual mold. I mean, we've seen some other examples too. The Giant Turnip and the Sapient Mustaches were also antagonists that didn't really fit the usual mold for the series, but yes, Roquefort and the Cheese Ninja are other examples. They're another example of outside context problems within the series. And besides that, Tom Warburton did comment on one of his blog posts that the idea of the Cheese Ninja just came from an old sketchbook of his. He said he used to draw sketches of Cheese Ninja in a sketchbook at some point in his life. So he finally was able to incorporate the Cheese Ninja into one of his works in this particular segment. Now, as for Roquefort and the Cheese Ninja, this is their only major appearance in the series, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe their only other appearance in the series is a cameo in the series finale. So you could say that really highlights how Roquefort is an outside context problem within the series. So for other details regarding this segment, well, yeah, this continues something that's been shown in earlier entries as well. Earlier entries in the series have shown Numbuh fancying himself as the comedian of Sector V. Yes, it was actually as early as Operation No Power when Numbuh would make jokes or make puns, and he would find them entertaining, although other characters wouldn't, or yeah, other characters, his fellow teammates in particular, didn't seem to find much humor in his jokes or his puns. But yes, it happened as early as Operation No Power, and there were some other entries too, like Operation Tapioca. But you could say that this segment in particular really highlighted Numbuh two's jokes or puns, and that's going to become more prevalent going forward in the series. Yes, you can expect to see more of Numbuh seeing himself as the comedian of Sector V in later entries, where he'll make more jokes or he'll make more puns. There's actually one segment in particular I'm thinking of, which actually really emphasizes, or yeah, really puts a lot of focus on Numbuh status as the comedian of Sector V, or at least Numbuh sees himself as the comedian of Sector V. But we'll cross that bridge when we eventually get to it. But there is a segment that actually puts notable focus on Numbuh love of jokes and puns. So otherwise, that's about it for this particular segment. So as of this video, we've now discussed the A segment of episode 21 of Codename Kids Next Door on this channel. Take care, and until next time.